Hello, Law Class of 2014. Hello, Mr. A. Today, I'll be dictating the life, philosophy, and philosophical views of one of the most famous figures today. He is widely known as a man named Karl Marx. Well, let's start off with a short biography. Karl Marx was born on May 5th, 1818 in Prussia, now formerly known as Germany and Poland. Marx was a philosopher, an economist, a sociologist, a historian, a journalist, and a revolutionary socialist. Basically, Marx was a Superman of his time. He believed that without philosophy, nothing could be accomplished. In 1848, Marx collaborated with another radical named Friedrich Engels on the creation of the Communist Manifesto. We also know that Marx studied at the University of Bonn, specifically for law, history, and philosophy, and graduated happily. The same year as his publication, Marx was arrested for sedition, in other words, inciting rebellion, and was thereby expelled from France. He then lived the rest of his life in England. Being denied entry to others, he spent most of his time studying the capitalist economy. He also advocated for workers' rights, and he ended up writing one of his most famous works, Das Kapital. He also married a lovely woman named Jenny Was Fountain. Marx lived the rest of his life in peace until his passing on March 14, 1883. Now that that's out of the way, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. When talking about law, there are two ways to think about it. For example, the law of gravity is commonly known as the cause that gives weight to physical objects. The term in this sense basically means that a specific outcome will take place granted certain conditions. Or there is other general meaning of law which is relevant here, is that law is a rule or norm which sets some specific action or avoidance of an action. In relation, there are two terms, natural law as well as positive law. By textbook definition, natural law is a theory that human laws are derived from eternal and unchangeable principles that regulate the natural world, and that people can become aware of these laws through the use of reason. In other words, it is unrestricted. Rights that are enduring and universal. Everyone has them. They cannot be limited. It is for the well-being of the individuals. Positive law, by textbook definition, is a theory that law is a body of rules formulated by the state, and that citizens are obliged to obey the law for the good of the state as a whole. In relation to Marx, he opposed the theory of natural law. He believed that natural law was to blame for the inequality between the working class and the wealthy classes. Through the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels expressed their thoughts on the problems that they saw within the capitalist system. They discussed the problems with permanent social classes, as well as they also discussed how the poor will suffer, because once poor, they will always be poor. Human society has been and always will be derived of social classes. So before the Industrial Revolution, Marx had formed a pyramid. He had workers on the bottom, the bourgeoisie or the middle class in the middle, and the wealthy on the top. After, he thought there would be a massive gap between all the classes. The poor would grow ever poorer and the wealthier ever wealthier. The poor worked in terrible conditions, and this would result in the grand theory of Marx, that the poor would overthrow the bourgeoisie and the wealthier classes. And once that happens, equality must follow. Everything would be shared. Everyone shared, and everyone's profits would be shared. Awesome. This would cause complete equality. The government would be held by the people. This new society would become social class free, and this would become a state of communism. And that's where we head back to natural law and positive law. Well, natural law in Marx's view is the source of inequality in classes. We know that. However, positive law would have to be abolished in order to reach this utopia of social justice. Marx also believed that the rights and freedoms were mere illusions, which had nothing to do with actual true social reality. As Marx saw it, the law was used for domination and class exploitation. Marx urged the obliteration of all current legal and moral rules, condoned communism as being the fundamental good of all humanity. It would eliminate the unequal applications of justice and result in a more centralized legal system and equitable economic distribution. Marx believed in this strongly, and he once said, "Let the ruling classes tremble at communistic revolution. The proletariats have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries, unite." There are very few immediate reactions to the Communist Manifesto. However, by the 1900s, its theory had spread across the globe. Marx's ideas of communism caused explosive results. His ideas affected many different countries. This included Russia's Lenin, China's Mao Zedong, as well as Cuba's Fidel Castro, whom all adopted Marx's theory of communism. Now, some say it's good and others bad, but let's lay it out with the pros and cons. Well, first, there's equality among members of society. However, wealth that was rightly inherited would become void due to this equality. On the other hand, proletariat workers will be paid according to their labor. Yet, their job isn't chosen, their jobs are given. On the brighter side, the educational advantages would become almost non-existent because society will be given an equal opportunity. Sadly, citizens have no control over civil rights. But unemployment will not become an issue because everyone would become employed. However, communism, as we know, always has a dictator, and this causes distress in society, as well as low incentives to work because everyone makes the same wages. A laborer would make the same as a doctor. So, was Marx's predictions right, or were they wrong? Well, I believe that Marx thought economic forces determined and predicted the outcome of society. Well, turns out there are many more factors. These factors include things like religion, things like nationalism, and wouldn't you know, things like ethnicity, and the list can go on and on. But now, I think I'd like to talk about a contemporary controversial issue, the Occupy Wall Street movement. The main goal of this movement is simply to end the relationship built on money and donations between elected officials and corporate interests that negatively impact social and economic welfare of the majority, or the 99%. People chose to camp outside of Wall Street in New York City. There were thousands of occupiers staying there for 2 months to raise awareness about the income disparity between the 1% and the 99%. The original movement was actually stemmed from people in Canada creating social media outlets to spread awareness. This finally led to a full-fledged protest. Now, to try on our Marxist thinking caps and consider what Marx himself may have thought about this movement. Well, according to criteria, Marx probably would have felt the Occupy movement was doing it wrong. As we know, Marxism is a critique of capitalism that eventually leads to a proletariat revolution. However, through a Marxist lens, this movement is not a proletariat revolution at all. Most of the activists were actually middle class as well as students, not what have been described as working class. But the main reason why Occupy was not entirely right is the fact that a revolution would have resulted in policy reform, while this movement has yet to accomplish that. But I do believe that Marx would give some parts of this movement a thumbs up, raising awareness for issues of concern, and also lighting a spark to what could have become a full-on uprising. Now I want to talk about Marx's definition of justice. He said that law is only a superstructure in reality. It only translates the interests of those who hold the reins of command in any given society, because they have the instruments of production within their control. To speak of a just law is to appeal to an ideology, that is to say, a false representation of reality. Justice is no more than a historical idea conditioned by circumstances of class. Also, did Marx support civil disobedience? Well, obviously, the whole theory of Marx revolves around this civil disobedience, due to the fact that he hypothesized a revolution that would break through these capitalist walls. When the government is no longer acting on the needs of the people, it is necessary for the people to remove the government. I appreciate your patience on my never-ending narrative on the life and philosophy of Karl Marx. I hope I actually managed to keep you awake. Thanks, Law Class 2014.